So, purpose of today is about sales meetings and what to do in the sales meeting. Now, some of you might have a different format to your sales meetings than the format that I might discuss. So it might seem a bit different. Now, at some point you might have the thought that is, oh well, that doesn't work for me. That, you know, my process is different to that. And if you have that thought, I just want you to reframe that and go, well, how can I make this fit for me? How can I have a different process? So, you know, some people, if you're going into a tender process and you're going and there's pricing, you get a second meeting or whatever, just get the best out of the format that I share with you, and it'll work. So instead of thinking, oh well, this is different, I'm not going to learn anything, just change the question in your head to make it, how can I make this fit with how I have to do my meetings? Does that make sense to everyone? So we don't get closed down by that. The editing, so
Yeah.
that's fine. So this is my 4-step sales and marketing process. I want to take you through that so that you can see. I know some of you have seen it before. Some of you about half an hour ago. But I want to take you through it so you can see where what we're going to do today fits into the process. So, step number 1. The art of marketing. So, this part is about, it's called the art because it's creative. It's the bit where we have to get our thinking caps on and where we start to work out who we are as a brand, who our brand personality is, and then start to communicate with the customer in a way that really connects with them. And the mistake that most people make is that they talk about themselves and their process and what they do to the customer, who doesn't give a crap about any of that. All they care about is their result and their outcome, the benefit to them of having the service. So the question to ask yourself at this point is, what's the conversation that they're already having with themselves? So what's the conversation that your target market are already having in their own heads? And if you can connect with that, you're in business. Because what most people do is try to instigate a conversation in the customer's mind, in the prospect's mind. But if you can tap into the conversation they're already having, then that's a fantastic place to be. So, you know, for you guys, the conversation they might be having might not be, I need a new website. It might be, God, I can't afford a holiday. And, you know, my business is grounding out every month and I'm using credit cards to pay the bills, or I want, you know, I've got a good business and I want to get to the next level. How do I do that? I don't know how to do that. And that's the conversation that they might be having. Scott, for you, the conversation they might be having is, you know, if I've got to deal with health and safety and fire as well, I've got so many other things I need to do. If only someone could take this evil thing away from me, so that, you know, so I could press a button and have it done. That might be the conversation that they're having. Kate, they might be having conversations around, how do we not be the next Mutiny Festival? How do we make sure that everyone's safe? You know, we're bringing £100,000 to the area. How do we make sure that we don't have any disasters? And how do we protect our license to make sure that we get to do this event again and again and again? So what is the conversation they're already having with themselves, and how can we talk about the outcomes for them so that we're connecting exactly with what they want? And those of you, I think most of you are coming to my Andy Bounds event. If you listen to his podcast, he'll talk about his afters concept, which is what no one cares about what you do, they care about what happens after you've done it. So for you guys in recruitment, they don't care about your process, or they don't care about your CV vetting process particularly. All they care about is that they've got a fantastic person in their business that's perfect for that business, that helps that, you know, that cares for the people, that whether it's a nursing home or a hospital. That's what they care about, is that they get to continue their service. So having that conversation with what they really want, rather than what we do is really important. So that's the art of marketing. And that's the point where we work out what we're going to say. The next part of it, to keep in my colour scheme, cool. That's a C. The science of marketing. And that is around, once we've decided what to say, we've got to figure out who we need to say it to and how we're going to say it to them, in what medium. So we've decided what we're going to say, and we need to go and say it to these group of people. So where are those group of people hanging out? Are they hanging out on LinkedIn? Are they hanging out in networking meetings? You know, is this the sort of thing that they would like to see on the, you know, on the TV, in a TV ad, or on the radio when they're driving the car? What is the mode of communication for us to spread our message? And once we've decided on that, then we embark on those processes and ruthlessly measure every single part of that process. So we need to know, for every strategy that we're employing, how many leads we get from that strategy, how much that strategy costs us, in both time and resources, because it might not cost you much money, but if it takes up half your week, the opportunity cost of that is great. So to make sure we measure how much time it is as well as money. And if you really want to get scientific on it, you can work out how much that time costs you and then add that in. So how much it costs you, how many leads you get from it, so then you know how much those leads cost, and how many, maybe how many quotes or proposals you get to make from those leads, and from those proposals how many clients you get. And if you measure those conversion rates, we know that it takes us 5 leads to get, an inquiry, or a proposal, sorry, in a meeting. So, and it costs us £100 in Google pay-per-click to get us those 5 leads. So that meeting costs us that proposal costs us £500 to do. And if we convert 50% of our proposals or our meetings, it means a new client costs us £1,000. Now, if the thing we're selling costs 200 quid, and it's a one-time purchase, we're in trouble. You know, if that £1,000 buys us a retained customer that pays us £2,000 a month for the next 24 months, then we're in business. So there's a couple of different ways that acquisition costs go. Allowable acquisition cost is that the acquisition cost is less than the initial purchase, and a more long-term acquisition cost is where the cost of the customer is recouped after several purchases. Now, that's not to say that you don't use that strategy, but you now have to cash flow that, because you're spending money on marketing for 3 months and you don't get your money back until that point, so you need to make sure you're cash flowing it. But if you've got the initial, if your initial purchase, like your first month's, if you're on retainers, if your first month retainer is more than the acquisition cost, then effectively you've got an unlimited marketing budget. Because as soon as one comes in, you can afford the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and that goes through, and you don't have to cash flow it. So that's the science of marketing. Maybe it should be the maths of marketing, but isn't quite as elegant. So the next stage.
It's also mum.
Sorry?
Mum. The American mum.
It's
That's
what?
Marketing. Sounds like the American way of saying mum.
Oh, okay. The next thing is the sales system. So what happens when the customer sticks their hand up and says, right, okay, I'm interested now, or they fill in your inquiry thing on the website, or they phone you up, or they do what you've told them to do in that respect, to say they're interested. How do you deal with them then? Because what most people do, if it's a sales meeting type process, is someone sticks their hand up, they say, brilliant, I'll come and see you on Tuesday. And then the next thing they hear from you is Tuesday when you turn up on the front door, and you're cold at that point. You're stone cold because you've not had any sort of warm up. So those meetings are not going to convert as well. So what we have to do in the sales meeting is to convey information to the customer about us. And rather than tell them we're reliable, on time, we do everything that we say we're going to do, we show them, and we show them in that sales process. So if maybe in that sales process there's a call booked, and that's the initial thing, and the call's booked for 2 o'clock, we don't phone them at 1:59 or 2:01, we phone them at 2 o'clock. And we phone them, if they're not there, that's their lookout, but we've done our bit, we phone them at 2 o'clock. Now in that initial phone call, it's probably a good idea to start doing a bit of a fact find so that you can propose to them later. Now, that fact find is as much about you getting information about them as it is about them getting information about you. So even though you're doing a fact find and you're coming from the place of a fact find, the perfect response you want to get to one of your questions is, oh, that's a good question. No one's ever asked me that before. I hadn't thought about it that way. I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that. We've never thought about it that way. As soon as you're getting them into that place, they're immediately thinking that you're different. So in that fact find, you're saying things like, right, for us to be able to operate our system, and this is one of my systems, I call them a UBS, Unique Business System. I'm going to show you my UBS. You wouldn't call it that. You've got your clarity model that we've just worked on. So I'm going to show you my clarity marketing model. But I need to ask you some questions first so that we can get the best use of our time. And then you ask them some really insightful questions. They go, probably around, well, how do you know if your marketing's working? And they'll go, oh, I don't know, but the phone rings a bit. And you go, oh, okay, so do you know how much it costs you for a lead? No, I've got no idea. Oh, okay. So who's doing your, well, this other agent's doing our marketing, but they don't tell me how much my leads cost. Right, okay. Well, we'll cover that in the meeting. So that you're getting them thinking already. And if you get that call right, that's when the sale's made. At that point, the meeting is due diligence. They're just going to make sure that you've got 2 arms and 2 legs and you're as good as you sounded on the phone. So that initial call is really important. So then I would suggest at some point between then and the meeting, you're now going to send something out for them. Like a pack that's got some stuff, like maybe a CD or a USB with some videos and things like that for them to watch in the meantime, to keep them warm. Do that. I like to send things out hard copy. There's 3 different types of learners. You've got auditory learners, you've got visual learners, and you've got kinesthetic learners. I'm a kinesthetic learner because I like to touch and do. I learn a lot more from doing than I do from seeing is my next. Auditory, I'm virtually 0, which is probably why my wife says that I don't listen. I think that's what she said. But so kinesthetic, you need to appeal to all the people. So you need to appeal to the auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. So if you send something email, you've only got auditory and visual. If you send something hard copy, you've got auditory, visual, and kinesthetic taken care of. And for a kinesthetic, those kinesthetics in the room will know if they feel a folder that someone sent, and they'll actually feel it like that. And if it feels nice, ooh, that feels like it's not the cheapest one. It's quite matte or something like that. And I can tell you're visual because you're smiling. So you're a kinesthetic because you're smiling because you go, yeah, I feel stuff.
What's the word?
Kinesthetic.
Sounds like you're not saying it correctly.
Kinesthetic.
Kinesthetic.
Kinesthetic. So your aesthetic is the look, and then kin is the kinetic,
Yeah.
which is to touch and move. Yeah, that's what the word splices.
Okay. So by sending something out, you've got visual. You spoke to them on the phone for the auditories. You've showed them something for the visuals, and there's something that they can touch for the kinesthetic. So you made a connection in all the different ways. And if you're going to send something out, it's always a courtesy to make sure that they received it. So I'll follow that up with a phone call. Mr. Smith, just making sure you got the pack out that we've sent out to you. And one of the tips there is, if they got, yeah, I've got your pack. Can you just make sure that the data stick that I put in there with the videos on is in there, because sometimes the office junior forgets them. Can you just get the pack out? You know, you've got my FAQs, and you've got the letter that comes with it, and you've got the data stick. Great, I'm glad it's all there. Of course, you packed it yourself, and you knew damn well that it was in there because you wouldn't have that little attention to detail to make sure it wouldn't. But now you know that the stuff is all over the bloke's desk, and that's what that bit's for. So now you know he's going to look at your video and look at your stuff. So the next thing is that you will call them the day before, and you call them to say, just a waterproof to save you going to the meeting and he's forgotten. Just to confirm, I'm coming to you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Just want to check that there's parking and no major roadworks around you, because I obviously want to make sure I'm on time. Great, okay, so you've got parking there, perfect. And then you want to do what we call a positioning statement, or an intent statement. Sorry, the positioning statement comes later. Intent statement. So that is when you're telling them what's going to happen tomorrow, or reminding them. So you're saying, so just as a reminder, tomorrow, Mr. Smith, what's going to happen is I'm going to come in, and based on the conversation we had a few days ago, I've got some thoughts and ideas and strategies that's going to move your business forward, get you to your result, or whatever that looks like. And I'm going to present those to you. I'm going to ask you a few more questions so we can get a bit deeper into that as well. And at the end of that session, you're going to feel like you're in a position that you know how we work and what we are able to do for you, and that will then help you to make a decision about whether or not to go ahead with our services tomorrow or not. So what you're doing in that statement is you're telling them in advance that they're going to have to make a decision tomorrow. And of course, does that mean everybody makes a decision tomorrow? Absolutely not. But what it will do is they will then sleep on the fact they've been told they've got to make a decision, and actually people can be quite compliant. If you tell them they've got to make a decision, they'll make a decision. And actually, if that decision's no, I'd rather that I get a no tomorrow. The worst outcome from the meeting is that I'll think about it. That's the worst outcome. A no's a better outcome than that, because at least you're not going to waste any more of your time with the follow-ups. So that's the last part of the sales system, is the intent statement before in the sales process. And that's so that they're prepped for the meeting. So the rest of what we're going to do today is talk about the last stage, which is nicely spaced. Doesn't help that I'm actually doing a squat to be able to get down there. The emotional buy-in, that allegedly says. So for all intents and purposes, this is sales, selling. You're going in there to sell to that person. And it's an emotional decision that they're going to make. Who's read any Simon Sinek or watched his videos? Yeah. Have you watched How Great Leaders Inspire Action, the TED Talk that he's done? You've probably seen it in other bits, but he says that in that video, it's a TED Talk, it's a 17-minute TED Talk, and in it he says that the part of your brain that makes a decision has no form of language. I'm very aware that all of a sudden there's a medical doctor in the room who might they just call this actual pseudoscience and nonsense, I don't know. But is there anything in that, do you think, from or not? From
a neuroscience perspective,
yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
Right.
From a sales conversation, I get what he's trying to get.
Right. Well, we'll edit that bit out of the video and stick with our pop pseudoscience, if that's okay.
Amiable buyers, that would apply to. Technical buyers, maybe not. Technical people would analyse the data, the figures.
Yeah, but that's the problem, is people who try and analyse a decision struggle because they can't, because the decision is mostly emotional. Mm-hmm. Like if you're buying a car, you're going to look at some of the stats of that car. Now, if I tell you that car has 100 litres of boot space, does that create an emotion in you? Not particularly. If I tell you that it's got an NCAP rating of 5, that may or may not, depending on where your priorities lie. But if I tell you that car goes from 0 to 60 in less than 5 seconds, there's probably some people in the room, I know there's a car nut over there smiling away, that will immediately create an emotion. And it's not the fact that the car goes from 0 to 60 in less than 5 seconds. It's the fact that I can feel what that feels like, and I've now created an emotion, and all of a sudden I'm imagining putting my foot down and being pushed into the seat. That's what sells the car. So that's why it's the emotional buying. So we're talking about selling. I want you all to do a quick exercise. On your pages, write down, when I say the word salesman, write down the first 3 things that come into your head. 3 words or phrases.
Sweet Jetson. 2.
So what words have we got?
Pushy.
Pushy,
Sharp.
shark,
Yeah.
yeah,
Talkative.
talkative,
Smarmy.
smarmy,
Persuasive.
sorry,
Persuasive.
persuasive,
Oh,
bold. Is that good bold or bad bold? Bad bold.
well, depending on your preference for.
Yeah, from your point of view, but it's bad bold. You mean, yeah. So was it greasy? Oh, okay. Any others?
The first things that popped into my head was 1980s insurance and git.
Right, okay.
It's an outdated word, isn't it?
Well, I'm a salesman. Thanks very much, you are. But also so are all of you within your businesses. And that's the problem. Who's ever felt like within their business that they recoil a little bit from being too pushy, salesy or something like that? Let me show you this video. It might give you an example. I love this video. This is an example of exemplary sales. And I've just got to wait for the Wi-Fi to come on. Here you go.
Some people recruit MLM. Some people sell other people's products, affiliates. Some sell gadgets on Facebook.
I'm skipping the ad.
We sat right here in this room and went over this and over this.
Yeah, but that true code.
I sat right here and said I didn't want any true code.
Yeah, but I'm saying that true code, you don't get it. You get oxidation problems. It'll cost you a heck of a lot more than $500.
And you're sitting there, you talking in circles, you're talking like we didn't go over this already.
Yeah, but this true code.
We had a deal here for 19.5. You sat there and darned if you didn't tell me you'd get me this car, these options, without the ceiling for 19.5.
All right, I'm not saying I didn't.
You called me 20 minutes ago and said you had it ready to make delivery. It says, come on down and get it. And here you are, and you're wasting my time and my wife's time. And I'm paying 19.5 for this vehicle here.
All right. I'll talk to my boss. See, they install that true code at the factory. There's nothing we can do. But I'll talk to my boss.
These guys here, these guys. It's always the same. It's always more.
Going to the Gophers on Sunday? Won't you bet you? I'm gonna have an extra ticket.
Kidding.
Never done this before. But seeing as it's special circumstances and all, he says I can knock $100 off that true code.
Lied to me, Mr. Mudguard. You're a bald-faced liar. A fucking liar. Where's my goddamn checkbook? Let's get this over with.
That's from the film Fargo. Have you seen it?
Did you Steve Buscemi?
The bit I love the most about that scene is when he's looking all at the end, and then the bloke says, "Where's my checkbook?" And he just goes, looks up, goes, "Done it." That is what people think of salesmen, isn't it? Do any of you want to behave like that? I know Erin's thinking, that looks quite good. I'm going to try that one. But of course we don't want to be that person. But actually, we never are. We're never going to be that person. My definition of selling is professionally helping someone to buy. You know, thinking about all the things that you sell, is there a case that sometimes you're in front of someone and you know you can help them. You know they need what you've got, and they just are in a position, they don't know that yet. But you know that they need it, and it'll work for them, and you've got some work to do to professionally help them to buy it. That's not pushing, that's just helping them. And it's helping them to get to that decision. And sometimes people do need a bit of a shove. They need to be pushed down that pipeline, because some people are indecisive. Some people will go away and they'll kind of want it, and then they just don't like making a decision, and they'll go away, and even if they were reasonably convinced in the room, they'll go away and they'll get someone to talk them out of it later on, and they'll just stick with the same website they ever had. They won't change their entertainment supplier because the last lot are all right, really, you know, and they don't want to upset them or whatever, and they'll go off the boil in that respect. And you've not served them, you've not helped them if you let them off the hook in that way. If you don't help them to make that decision, you've not served them. You know, you're in a, like you guys, you're in a position to transform people's lives through their business. And by not helping them to buy your product in a professional way, you've let them down. If you, go on.
Which is exactly what we're doing with our furniture client at the moment. But it hasn't been easy to try and get him to part with over £15,000 over 3 months. But I truly believe he needs to do it for him to be able to pass the keys of his business that his father left him to his son. If he doesn't, he will be closing the doors in 2 to 5 years and walking out and feel embarrassed at the golf club. Where's your business from? And that's, we are helping this guy.
Yeah.
And that's the kick.
Does anyone here sell crap? There's always- Does anyone here?
Overpriced crap.
Does anyone here walk away from a sales situation when someone said yes and walk away thinking sucker? Of course we don't. We genuinely think that thing they, you know, when they say yes, we go good decision, don't we? Because I really think I can help you. So we need to get past this sales thing, because you're all salespeople, and you need to go out and sell. And if you don't sell to your prospective customers or sell more to your existing customers, you're letting them down. And a good example of that is, you know, Harmeet from our BNI. I had a conversation with him the other week, and he does broadband and mobile phones. And we were talking about, he said, I've got some mobile phone customers, but I don't really feel comfortable like selling them, you know, being pushy and pushing my broadband onto them. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, how many of those have you got? And then I took a swig of my drink, and he said 6,000, and I almost spat the drink all over him. I said 6,000 mobile phone customers. And he went, yeah. And he said, and I haven't, you know, I haven't let them know because, you know, I don't want to bother them. And I said, you're out of order. You know, is your broadband package probably almost certainly better than what they've already got? Yeah, it is. I know I can save them money, and they don't have to deal with the likes of Vodafone and BT and any of that crap. Which anyone around the room dealt with Vodafone and BT. I was getting quite a lot of nods, thinking, yeah, you save them the agony of dealing with those horrible companies, and save them a few quid as well. You're out of order by not letting them know. You need to go right to them all and apologise, all 6,000. So he sent one email to 6,000 customers entitled apology, and in it, so really sorry, we've let you down because we've not let you know about our broadband. You're a great mobile phone customer. We've not let you down about we've not told you about our broadband. So I feel like we've let you down a little bit. So look, here's the offer. We've got a special offer for you if you'd like to take it on. And he hit send. And what happened next, he said, was unbelievable. Within 60 minutes, he had 50 customers. And to the tune of, I think that was 15 grand in upfront fees, let alone the ongoing, he gets a connection fee and then an ongoing rental. So it was 15 grand in an hour response to that one email. And over a period of 48 hours, it was £26,000 worth of business, just on the upfronts, not the, he gets like £8 a month on going from those. And of course he was delighted, and his customers were delighted that I was, oh, you know, we already do business with them, put it all together in one, we get good customer service, it's an absolute win-win. The upshot of that is then he said, well, that was brilliant. I said, great, well, what was your open rate of the email? Because, oh, it was really good, Jeff, it was about 2%. Okay, do you realise that 98% of those people haven't seen your offer? Oh, great. So now we've got a campaign to get the other 98%. There's probably 100 grand in that list, easy. And that was £100 left on the table because he didn't want to be pushy and didn't want to be the salesperson. You know, he's an intelligent guy, he's a good business owner, but he's in a place where he just didn't want to be pushy. And there's probably more than 100 grand in there, but there's easily 100 grand left on the table by not being pushy. And he wasn't even pushy, he just offered them something. To date, he sent them a second email, and that made him about £10,000 worth. And that was only, he's now segmenting his list and getting a bit more specific with it. But there's easily going to be 100 grand in there. So I wanted to start with getting rid of some of that stuff. It's your duty, if you believe that what you sell is good, it's your duty to go out there and sell it. And be a sales professional. Be good at selling. And being good at selling takes work, it takes time and practice. You need to read some books, you need to come to things like this. Today will give you a great start on selling, but by all means, I wouldn't be so arrogant to think that that will be the be all and the end all. If you want to be good at sales, be an eternal student of sales and helping people to get what you want, what you've got, and get better and better at it. So we're going to take you through a process today, loads of techniques and things that will help you get to a yes with your people. But have we safely dispelled the don't want to be a cheesy salesman thing? Well, we have on an intellectual level, maybe on an emotional level, some people will still hang on to that. Because there'll be core values in there that are still hanging around in there that might get trampled on in that respect. An example of that is when you're a child, how persistent, who's got kids? How persistent are children? Oh my life. They do not stop. If they want some sweeties or whatever it is, they do not stop. How persistent are salespeople? Not very. They stop on average, they stop after the second follow-up. And the reason for that is when they were children and they asked for stuff, and they ask and they ask and they ask and they ask, at some point they've got a clip round the ear, that's something to learn about, or they got told, don't ask, it's rude. Askers don't get. Keep asking and you're less likely to get it. That's what we tell them. I caught myself telling my kids that. So they get told that for the first 18 years of their life, then we throw them out into the workplace and say, right, you're a salesman now, off you pop, and by the way, if the customer says no, just phone them back next week, and the week after, and the week after. Oh, okay, so we understand how that works intellectually, but on an emotional level, that feels very uncomfortable for people, doesn't it?
My stepdaughter's got an uncanny knack for it, so she'll ask for something and she'll get it, and she'll go, we'll go have some more then. You know, if it's like bedtime at 10, she'll go, okay, oh, 10?
You know, imagine if you hired a salesperson that had that attitude. That'd be brilliant. But we beat it out of the kids because it's like, well, you have to understand the value of money and all that kind of stuff. And my pockets aren't endless, and because I mean, at some point you can't just give them everything all the time because that'll they'll be spoiled, B, you'll be skinned, and you know it doesn't work for anyone. But there has to be a balance. But if you tell them that don't ask, don't get, then they've got a value problem later on. The other sales thing that people's values is about valuing people's privacy. Like, especially those people in the days of phones that were attached to the walls rather than mobile phones. What's the cut-off for phoning someone's house?
1 o'clock.
Sorry?
5, 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, you were early to bed. About 9 o'clock? anything after 9 o'clock, that's a bit rude. And now, when someone comes to your house, they knock and wait to be entered, or is it just come in and shout you're here? If it's the first one, then you've got values. You go, no, you don't just come into my house, you knock and you wait. I'm a bit like, just come round, I'm not bothered. Because in my last house, we didn't have like a Yale lock, so you could always open it. You had to actually lock the door. So it was always open, just come in, not bothered. Maybe that's just lazy, I don't have to get off the sofa, I don't know. But most people have got the thing, well, you don't call me too late at night. It's different in the world of just send me a text, but don't call me too late at that night, and you knock on the door and you wait till you come in. I mean, these days, people text, I'm outside, but again, different kettle of fish. But then that's a value about people's privacy. So then we're thinking, right now, if you've got to phone somebody up and phone them up regularly in order to get an order, oh, hang on, their privacy. It's a value and it feels very uncomfortable. And those values are really not, they're built upon things that aren't true. But it feels right, it feels very, we don't know, in the moment when we're thinking, I phoned him 3 times this week, he did tell me to phone him and keep trying, but I feel uncomfortable. And we don't know why we feel uncomfortable, it's because of those values. So there's a probably deeper piece of work, and I'm working with all of you, so at some point we can dig into that. But that's not for here, because there might be private stuff, and we don't want people crying in public and stuff like that. It's not good. So, we're going to start learning how to be better at selling. Is that good? Okay. So, first thing. So, have you done one of these?
No.
Boom. Okay, so let me give you a very quick overview. So, this is based on a behavioural profiling assessment, and I'll get you to do one. I'll send you a link to it, and it asks you a load of weird questions, and then comes out with a report that in most cases is scarily accurate based on the fact that they gave you answered some quite stupid questions. And it breaks people down into 4 basic categories. So D stands for dominant, which is fast-paced, assertive. They are a results person, they're not a details person. So they're somebody who they'll say something like, don't tell me how you do it, just tell me the bottom line. Just tell me how much it is, or something. I don't need all the waffle. As a leader, sometimes if they're under stress, they can be bullying and controlling in that respect. But they don't necessarily have to be, it's just in some cases in their extreme. By the way, on the list of those podcasts I gave you, episode 7, podcast interview with Dr. Tony Alessandro. He's the guy that owns this process. I stands for influencer. So an influencer is your outgoing, there's quite a few eyes in the room, outgoing, fun, like the limelight, everybody look at me, they're like going to a party and dancing on the tables, that kind of thing. Those people are impulsive. They're not details orientated people, but they're very optimistic, which can sometimes let them down that they overpromise and underdeliver. So sometimes they'll say, yeah, no problem, we'll do all that as a salesperson, and then hand that over to the operations department who go, we can never deliver this. Or they say, oh, I'll definitely phone you next Tuesday, and because they're disorganised, they don't, and they let them down. So that's the high I. S stands for steady or supportive. So this person is still a people person, but they're less outgoing than the I's. They still like being around people, but they're probably just more happy to sit back and listen to the high eyes telling their anecdotes and their jokes and their stories. They are more cautious and they're more details orientated. The C is called conscientious. That person is very process driven and conscientious. That person is process driven and they are a details person. And this person is not going to forget things. They're not going to, you ask them to, you've got to be careful, you ask them to write you a report, they'll write you a 50-page report. I spoke to a very high C today and I said, send me, your thoughts on this. And I said, on no more than 2 pages. Because if you're not careful, he will send me a book. And I said, I won't read it. Because I'm one of these. And I'm not reading it. So just be really careful. Just bullet points, 2 pages. And he will send me 2 pages. If I'd have asked him for a page and a half, he'll send me a page and a half. Because that's just what they're like. So, these guys up here are fast paced. These guys down here moderate paced. And I don't use the word slow on purpose because slow has a connotation that it's just not true. And they're not slow, they just take a bit more time to make decisions. Over here, we're people orientated. And over here, we're task orientated. But importantly for this scenario as well, over here, we're open. And over here, we're guarded. So, how does this help us in the sales scenario? How can we use this?
You can adapt.
Yeah.
You can adapt to the person.
Mirror match.
Match and mirror, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Anything else?
Maybe help you choose the kind of people that you want to go after, so you don't have to act.
Yeah, I think you might be closing yourself down to a marketplace unnecessarily in that respect. Because we can be better than that. We don't just go, well, I'm only high eyes, I'm going to do business with high eyes. That might end up being the case more often than not, but doesn't mean we can't end up doing business with C's or S's in that respect.
How much you follow up with them,
Yeah.
or the approach.
Yeah, and how you present to them
Yeah.
on the day when you're in the meeting. So, I'm going to go first. So let's look at the different characteristics in a sales. No, before we do that, let's talk about how do you know. So I phone up John. I never met John before. John has just stuck his hand up because I sent him a LinkedIn message. He said, yeah, okay, I'm interested in a conversation. How am I going to find out what profile John is?
You'd have to speak to him, surely.
Yeah, so I'm on the phone with him, and specifically, how am I going to find out what profile John is?
Questions, tone.
Yeah. So what will I ask him?
How are you?
Yeah, great. And what am I looking for?
If he says, I'm fine, like, short answer, that's D. And then if she says, yeah, I'm good, I'm up to this, blah, blah,
If they're an
blah.
I, I'm really good. Had an amazing weekend with the family and the kids. Saw all my friends. Had a great time. How about you?
Well, actually, the how about you is more likely to be S. But yeah, absolutely. So you can just start him into a conversation. You see, I sometimes cheat. I just send him a disc report to do before I meet him. But there you go. But yeah, if you ask them how they are, over here, guarded, task focused, how I feel right now is irrelevant to the process that we're about to go through. So it's not relevant. So, this person will answer out of courtesy, I'm fine, thank you, how are you? This person here go, oh yeah, well, what do you want? They'll probably just go, they may not ask you how you are back. They go, yeah, all right, what's this about? Okay, let's get down to business. And at that point, for this person, if they go, they're in that mindset. I'm very busy and important. I've got lots of important decisions to make right now and people to go and talk to. So get down to it. So immediately you're going to reflect that back to them and go, well, I can see you're a busy person, so I'm going to get right down to business for you. Oh, good. That's what I want to hear. I'm not going to fluff you around with any waffle. So this is why I'm calling. Or if it's in the meeting, you know, let's get down to business. You know, we don't need tea and biscuits. Let's get down to business. Also about D's need to be challenged in some cases. If you're up against a really high D and you wilt, they will not respect you. I've had a very good example of this, which of course I did it on purpose for you guys, to tell you the story. But I phoned this guy up. Someone had made an appointment for me to speak to him on the phone, and hi Bill, it's Jeff here from Action Coach. My colleague has booked us a slot today. I went, okay, what do you want? Okay, this is exactly the sort of phone conversation I love. I'm thinking straight away, because I really hate those. I go, wow. So, you know, I started going into a bit of my spiel. So you know, it's good at this point. We'll have a bit of a conversation about your business and see where you're at, and then, you know, if we see value in that later, then we can maybe arrange a meeting and get together. So you know, do you want to tell me a bit of the background? How long you've been in business or something? And he went, no. You tell me about you and your business. Now at that point, I should have challenged him and said, well, I could do that, Bill. I actually think his name was Bill, actually. No. I use Bill and Bob normally, but I really think his name was Bill. Actually, Bill, you haven't got really time for me to twaddle on about me, because you're not really interested in that. For us to find some synergy, I could come in and help you in your business. So it's much more, I'm sure our time would be much better spent talking about you and your needs than me waffling on about, you know, how many GCSEs I've got. Oh yeah, fair point. Okay, so this is our business. It may or may not have gone that way. That's not what I said. I didn't challenge him back. What I did say, he said, you tell me about you and your business. I went, okay. And then went, and just gave him this breathless, nervous pitch, because he definitely had the upper hand on me. And, wow, I've been doing this for so long, and then, well, what we do is brilliant, and we'll work with you in your business, and you make loads of money, and then you blah, 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 for about 5 minutes. And I stopped, he went, nah, and hung up on me. And it was horrendous. It was a car crash. And I present it for you to enjoy now. Sorry, you're going to say something?
It's that kind of, you tell me about your business and I'll decide whether you've got anything I want.
Yes.
It's like, I'm in charge, I know what I want, I know what's good for my business, you've now got to sell to me.
Yeah.
As opposed to doing probably the opposite that he would do.
But yeah, absolutely. I've not looked at it in that way. I really like that positioning of it. Because actually what we need to do is push back and go, you don't want me to blather on. What's important is what I can do for you in your business, and I can't know that until I know anything about the business. So she just have a conversation around that. And we'd had probably a better conversation at that point. He might not have been in the slightest bit interested, but at least I would have pushed back on him and he'd have more respect for me. If a high D pushes you and you just bend over, then in that, you exactly that positioning. No, I'm in charge of this. This is my process, but actually you've all got a process for your sales, and you're not serving that person by not going through your process. So you have to push back and go, well, I do find that the best way for us to get value out of this, so you can not waste any of your time and talk about what's important to you, this is the way I'd rather do it. Is that okay? And he might say no, he might say yes, but if they're really belligerent, you might end up not doing business with them. But at least you're giving it a chance. Because if you do it on their agenda, then they don't know what you're going to present and how you want to present it. And if you don't know anything about their business, all you're doing is pitching. And at no point during this process do I advocate pitching. Where you just, because if I'm pitching to you, I'm talking to you, I'm being completely inconsiderate of your needs and telling you what your needs are. I'm telling you what I think you need without bothering to ask, and that is bad selling. We don't pitch at all. Get rid of the word pitch. You know, if you're thinking, sometimes people say little bits of language that stick in, like, oh, I'm just going to go and pitch for this piece of work. Don't go pitch for anything. Go and find out if there's synergy and you can work with someone. Don't go pitch. You know, I was working with a business and they were trying to tell me that in their industry that everybody was only interested in price and that we couldn't put the prices up because it's all about price. And my pushback to that always is, well, maybe there's something in your marketing that's saying cheap, which is why you're attracting cheap customers. Because there are people out there that don't buy the cheapest of everything. Thinking about you guys now, do you buy the cheapest shoes that are available on the marketplace? Do you buy the cheapest car or go on the cheapest holiday? No, you don't. You do the value equation, and it's the same for everybody. And I was just going through this process with the client in his office, and he wasn't buying it at all. He go, no, there's nothing like that in my marketing. We're all about tradition and quality. And then his surveyor came past and said, all right, I'm off out now. I'm going to go and see Mrs. Smith and give her a price. That was a sales meeting. And the only thing in his mind is going to go and give her a price. Yeah. It's going to be $4,000. See ya. No sales at all. Just price. And he's wondering why people are buying on price. So, a high I. What's important to an I when you're meeting them? Relationship.
They like to be liked.
Like to be liked, and they want to do business with people they like. Not important. Don't have to like you. I'll still buy it. Over there, they have to like you. So that's where rapport builds really important. This person, I need to let's get down to business, not waste any time. This person, niceties. Hey, how's it going? How long have you been here? You know, got any kids? You know, nice suntan, have you been on holiday? All that kind of thing, but always. All that kind of stuff. So they need a nurturing in that respect, and they want to have fun with you in that meeting. They want to feel important. This person, the length of meetings, you can have them boxed off in 20, 30 minutes. Sometimes they can be bloody hours. Because you're just having so much fun, especially if you're one too. Naturally, you're just having a great old time. High I's love being around other high I's. If you're not an I, then you still need to increase tempo and volume and stories. I's love stories. And they like jokes and laughing and fun. So you need to make the process like that. They're not details people. So if you start going, well, I need to go through this spreadsheet of all the stuff that's similar to this person as well. You start to go through all that stuff, all the details. It's not fun anymore. Not bothered. Especially important to be talking about outcomes for these people. Outcomes, not process. So, S, steady or supportive. These people aren't quick decision makers. Some of them break the world record of how long they think about it before they say yes, Kate. Quite often an S will want to go away and think about it. And they'll be in a situation, if you push them too hard, you make them feel uncomfortable. So you have to be a little bit careful with them. And if you push them too hard, they'll say yes and then back out. Kate, we had a chat. You waited a month, and you came back and you'd made your decision. You're very special in that respect, because most people go off the boil, and especially for something that no one needs coaching to survive at the basic level. You only need something that you want to get to another level. So that's why it's easy to go off the boil. No one needs a website if they've got a website. So that's why they'll go off the boil in that respect.
I guess with a D, it's like that kind of, look, if I do this, I'm just going to get you this, and this, are you going to sign up? But
Yeah.
go on then, let's do it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hold you to that. That's
Yeah.
the kind of outcome. With an S, it's I need to think about it, and you need to kind of, what can I send you while you're thinking about it that may help support that decision, which is awkward me saying that because I'm about to go.
So with S's, you can get a decision on a day out of them, but you just have to be careful you don't get a false decision out of them, because S's don't like upsetting people. So whilst a D, you'll just look at you and go, nah, it's not for me, mate, not bothered, thanks. Or an S would never say that, because they'd think that was horribly rude. So, you know, I've walked out of a sales meeting with a signed piece of paper from an S, and as soon as I hit fresh air, the first words that came into my head were completely involuntary. As soon as I went out into fresh air, I went, yeah, right, that's so not happening. And I'm fairly convinced that he was sitting at his desk, Googling new office premises, so that he think if I move offices before he comes back, I'll never have to see him again, and then I won't have to face the fact that I actually didn't really want that and I couldn't make a decision. I actually probably could have got him to a decision. The mistake I made is I went into there because I got impatient with him, because he was struggling to make a decision. I got impatient because I'm an ID, so when I'm presenting normally like this, I'm in my eye, and then I can feel it happen sometimes. Within me, it's like my D comes in and goes, get out of the way. Job for me now. Right, everybody, stop mucking about, you know. And I used to get that very much in my previous business. And I learned over time that when that happened, people cried and wanted to leave. And it wasn't a good managerial style, because I'd try and get there through my eye, and if I couldn't get anywhere, the D would come out and go, right, I've had enough of this now, you do this, you do that, you shut up and get that done. And then it just didn't work, because that's where my D came in. And that's kind of what I did in that sales meeting. And he went, okay, Jeff, yeah, there we go. And I even knew as well, I said, well, there's a bit there if you fill out your credit card details. Oh, I'm not sure, I don't know, I think that I've left them in the car. Oh, is that not your wallet there? No, my business card is right, okay. Just tell me, it's all right, I can deal with it. Because actually, I'm not sure I want to do business with you now anyway, because, you know, if you can't make a decision at some point, we're not going to work together. So a C is a conscientious. Oh, so let's finish on S's. So you can get a decision out of an S on a day. You might need to take longer with them. And an I or a D, you come and go, what's going to happen? We're going to change everything. It's going to be brilliant. And overnight, you're going to get this massive change and shift and stuff. And they go, brilliant. You're going to turn 180 degrees, go back in the other direction. With an S, you're going to get the same result, but the languaging is different. The languaging is about small changes, incremental changes, that later on mean to get you to a big result. These people, wham bam, yeah, we're going to change it all. We are going to change it all, but one little bit at a time. It's going to be fine, there's not going to be too much change, and what you'll slowly notice happening over a period of time, they feel a bit much more comfortable with that. So C's need to know they need to know all the details around the stuff. So be prepared with a C to be able to give them all the numbers, especially in your, where you are. You've probably come across them and you're thinking, my God, how many more numbers can I give this person? They want to know all the numbers. And if you don't give them the numbers, they'll get upset and they'll feel uncomfortable around that. And especially if you're in this place and you're going, oh, don't worry about that, that'll be fine. Well, no, it's not fine. I need to know exactly how that's going to work. And when we start working together, what happens on the first day? And then what happens on the second day? And when our website's being built, what happens when we get to this level and the Google thing and all the numbers and all that thing? They need to know all those processes. And you need to tell them, because they won't make a decision until you've done that. Now, I remember another one, I did it on purpose for you guys to give you a good story. And I was convinced that this person was a D. And I went to see him. And the reason I was convinced he was a D, because most of the time he was sitting there, he was talking to me, he was sitting there like that in alpha male's position. He was man-spreading me with his hands behind his head. And I thought, well, that's a total dominating position, so he's a D. I actually recorded this meeting which was particularly unenjoyable when I listened back as to how shocking it was. Because several times in the meeting he goes, yeah, I think I really need to do this. I can see how that really will work for me. Yeah, you're right, I really need to do this. And then I went, well, he's a D. So, like you said earlier, come on then, right, let's get cracking then. When do you want to book that in? What? He says, ooh, he just recoiled. And because I'd already decided, and in a grand example of insensitivity, I just pushed a little bit harder and a little bit harder. So I think he's a D, challenge him, slap him about a bit, he'll be fine. Come on, what's wrong with you? Let's get this done. You know, action is important. It's important to just get cracking with this stuff. And he was, oh, and you know, I could, there you go, there's the thing with the sign there. And he's, well, you know, I just want to, I think, and I remember at the time thinking, because I was in flow and I was in the moment, I didn't have time to really reflect. So I never questioned whether I was wrong about this. So that's where I was confused. If I'd have questioned that, went, oh, maybe I could have saved it and gone, oh, so what part of that, you know, do you need some more further clarity on it? Because actually, when I walked away and I listened to the recording, and I had a little think, what does this guy do for a living? He's a data analyst. And I gave him, you know, as soon as I got a couple of buy-in signals from him, I just started slapping him about and sign him up, which for a D would have been fine. But he'd need another hour out of me. Even though he's making buy-in signals, he needed patience out of me to go, this is the process, this is what the coaching program looks like, and then the first week we'll do this, and then the second week we'll do that, and the third week we'll do that. You know, he might have needed me to tell him exactly what we're going to do every coaching session for the next year. And if I didn't give him some sort of process for that, he wouldn't have bought with me. But I cut that way too short. I didn't use some of the things I'm going to talk to you about later. And I just tried to slap him about and I completely lost him. We arranged to have coffee a couple of weeks later after he thought about it, and that never happened. So you're going to say something, John?
I guess there's maybe like one question that you could ask is, are you saying that you're ready to sign up with me? Because that would apply to both D and to C. The D would say yes, the C would say not quite yet. And then you could say, well, what do I need to do? And quite often with that it would be like an example of a case study, or some numbers around what improvements could be made.
Yeah.
Because all the while, with all these people, you're selling a great product, you've just got to put it forward in a slightly different way so that they understand it, I guess, isn't it?
So what you're talking there about is oh, we're going to do it later, but let's do it now. Temperature checks. So a temperature check is a question, just like John said there, that you will ask at some point during the process to assess the temperature of the prospect. How are they feeling about the way that this is going? So if instead of charging in like a massive dick on my D horse in that situation, if I'd have asked him a temperature check question and actually listened to the answer, it's important that you have to listen as well. Listening to the answer, I probably could have saved that meeting because he was definitely on board. And if I'd have said at that point, how does this fit with what you had in mind? Or have I showed you enough yet that has given you enough information that lets you, so that we can move to the next step and talk about coaching programs? And at that point, he'd probably have said, no, you haven't shown me enough, Jeff. I'm still not clear about this, or I'm not clear about that. Oh, great, perfect. Well, let's talk about that. You see, if I'd have said, have I showed you enough yet? And he was a D, like I thought he was, he'd have gone, yeah, I've decided. Because if a D or an I to a certain extent says, yeah, I think I really need to do this, they've decided that they really need to do it. And you can move to the next level of the conversation. But this is the key thing, is don't assume where they are. Ask them a temperature check question. How does this fit with what you had in mind? Have I showed you enough yet that you're ready to make a decision? Are you ready to look at how the process, have I told you enough about what we do if we work together that we can maybe look at start dates or something like that. And you ask him, have I showed you enough yet? And you can ask that question several times. You can, because just because you normally have a 2-hour meeting to get a customer doesn't mean you can't close someone down in 20 minutes sometimes. If it works for them, if you're asking the question. And if they're like, oh yeah, I'm getting that, and then you said, how does that fit with what I had in mind? Super bloody brilliant. I'll worry about the details later, let's go for it. Great. But just because you've got a 2-hour presentation to make doesn't mean you have to deliver the 2-hour presentation. Because that person, D or I, impatient, they've already decided, because you did such a great call with them a week ago, they've done their due diligence, they've turned up, they like you, yeah, you seem all right, yeah, let's go for it. So take their money then. Don't go through the presentation just because you have to. Just because, oh well, we've got a process and I'm going to follow the process, but I haven't showed you this yet, I haven't showed you that yet. Well, who cares? They've already made a decision. So you can lose as many from overselling as you can sometimes by underselling. And the way to do it is by asking. And asking a temperature check question. Okay, so we're doing this a little bit arse about face, but let's now start at the start of the meeting, the very start of the meeting. Now, if you remember earlier, I talked about an intent statement, which is the thing that you'll do on a call the day before the meeting. Now, a positioning statement at the start of the meeting sets the tone for the meeting and sets up parameters by which that person will make a decision. So, for example, you would say, one of the ones I use is, look, if I'm to work with somebody, 3 things need to happen. Is we need to get 3 yeses. We need to know that I'm a good fit for you and you're a good fit for me. We like each other, that we can work together. Secondly, I need to know if I can add value to your business, and I need to sort of know that I can add value to your business, and you kind of need to be convinced of that too. So you need to be in agreement. And the third thing is that I need to know that you're committed to your business, because I don't want to work with someone who's not committed. And I know it sounds a bit weird, but sometimes I'm more committed to the growth of the business than the client, and I've had that relationship, and that doesn't really work for me. So does it seem reasonable? We go through, we'll dig into all the stuff that we talked about in the call a few days ago, dig into all that stuff, we'll come out with some strategies and ideas and thoughts, and at the end of that, if we get three yeses on both sides, then we're good to go and move forward. How does that sound? And you'll normally just get a nod. Yeah, that seems all right. Because that tells you several things. Firstly, I know what I'm doing. This is my process. I'm in charge of that. You're in good hands. This is a good way to do business. This is a good way to have this meeting. This is going to work for both of us in that respect. And you've told them exactly what's going to happen, and you've told them at the end of that, we need to get 3 yeses. If we get 3 yeses, then we're good to go. Again, so you're positioning and you're telling them how you want them to make that decision, which is really, really important. Because people are more compliant than you think they are. If you tell them that they've got to make a decision, they're more than likely to make a decision. And sometimes people position at the start of a meeting, I've heard this a lot actually, say, look, at the end of the day, we're all busy people. So a yes is a good decision. A no is a good decision. And I'll think about it, not so much. So our job here today is just to save us coming back and flushing this out. This might not work for every situation, especially in yours if you sit down with because what you'll be dealing with big contracts in that respect, so this one won't work for you. But a yes is good, a no's good if it's for the right reasons, because I don't work with everybody that I meet. But a maybe is a no decision, and that's what we don't want a maybe today, because at the end of the day, a maybe is generally is a fancy no, and you might as well just get the no. And you can say, look, if it's a maybe, then I'm going to call you next week and the week after and the week after, and that's going to annoy you. It's going to waste my time. So if we we'd spend as much time as we need today to either get that yes or no. I'm good with that. But let's just not do a maybe. Are you alright with not doing maybes? And that does depend on the situation that you've got. Because you might be in a situation where they're seeing 3 people. And so they're going to see 3 people no matter what, and you're the first one.
Yeah.
So that won't work in that scenario.
Or it depends if you're in front of the decision makers or not.
Oh well, you've got to be, and that comes in your sales process to make sure all the decision makers are in the room. So annoying when you get to the end of that thing and you go and you've got somebody absolutely on board. This has just been brilliant. Can't wait to tell my partner. You know, what partner? I didn't ask the question. Didn't ask the question in the sales process. Who else needs to be in the room? You've got to ask it that way. Not have you got a partner? Because if you say have you got a partner, no. And you get to the end of it. Oh, I'm just going to speak to my accountant or my friend Sally or whatever. They're in that situation. So you always have to get all the decision makers in the room. And thank you for reminding me of that because I do forget all the time. So, and it's nothing more annoying than get to that point.
Sometimes if you say like, who else needs to be in the room, they might say nobody, I can handle this, but they don't mean they can make a decision. So you can say maybe who else is involved in the decision making process.
Yeah. Because, you know, for us in our businesses, it's really hard. We have to work really hard to position the value of what we do. I've been coaching for 3 years. I've been working my hardest on learning how to best show the value of coaching to help people make the right decision to work with me. Now, I'm still not brilliant at that. I'm much better than I was. I've got lots of work to do on that. But that person, if I've worked with you Stuart, and you said, brilliant, I'm all excited, I'm going to go and tell my partner Brad, you're going to do a horrible job of it. I've been working at it for 3 years and I'm still not 100% brilliant at it.
Yeah.
You've been working at it for 2 minutes and you're going to go, Brad, well, I saw this bloke and it was really good. And so what did he say? What was his, wow, can't really remember, but I definitely think we should do it. Well, what the hell's this? And then what's your next question, Brad?
How much is it?
How much is it? And you'll go, oh, it's £2,000 a month. Fuck off. Because you haven't been in there and you haven't appreciated the value of the stuff. So it's really important to get everybody in the room. Thanks for reminding me of that. So positioning the meeting. Are we clear on that? Whatever your version of that is. And if your process involves then having a second meeting or something else, then position the whole process. You want to position, that positioning statement is, yeah, I've called it positioning the meeting, but actually you're positioning at some point when the decision is made. So, you know, maybe you're in a situation where I'm going to give you the financials today and I'm going to give you the costings. You might need to go away with your team and look at that. So I'm going to come back next Tuesday and ask for any questions that have come out from that session so that I can then answer them so that we can get to a decision. Because when it's a £100,000 contract for this, that and the other, you might not get a decision on the day in that way, but you're positioning when and how they're going to get to a decision. So we position the meeting, we've worked out what disc profile they are roughly, and sometimes, by the way, with disc, I'm not thinking, well, they're definitely C with a bit of S in them or something like that. I'm just getting a sense for whether they're open or guarded. So if they're guarded, I'm going to keep some of the emotion stuff out and some of the waffle out of it. If they're, you know, and task focused, I'm going to talk about process more. If they're open, and fast paced, I'm going to really, in fact, both of these people, I'm going to want to build a relationship with them. These people really need to be liked. These need more detail than these. Don't waffle. Don't give these guys too much detail because they'll just get bored. Isn't that right, John?
Yeah.
So, but these all need
Horrendous.
detail and to take your time, but also to slow down the delivery. One of the worst things you can do for a C or an S, if I position to a C or an S, a new concept or a new idea, what they're then going to do is they're going to especially if they're in their C, is they're going to put that in a box somewhere in their head, and they're going to work out how it fits into a process. And when they're going to do that, they're not going to be speaking, so they're going to stop. And it might only take them half a second or something like that. But if especially if I'm a bit nervous and if I'm getting waffly and they've just stopped and they're processing it, and I go, oh, and then the next thing, and the next thing, and then you'll see them go, too much, hang on, slow down, I haven't processed the last thing, you're irritating me now.
That's me and Brad. So I'll boom into his office and go, what, we need to do this. No. You can just crack on about that, that'd be amazing, okay? And it'll get done, and they'll be like, that's not quite how I saw it, okay? And then sort of the other kind of way around, and I'm completely wrong doing it, and not understanding Brad. And then sometimes Brad will come to me with more detail, and I'll be not switching off, but I'm just not interested. What's it going to be? What's it going to be? Okay, is that brilliant? Like that, and that's the challenge that we're now aware of, isn't it? That we can kind of like work on. So I'm always, have I given enough detail, or kind of have you got everything you need for that? So.
Yeah, because actually, in the high I head, when you're going through that detail, if you go into too much detail, this is exactly what is going through the high I's head. Oh, la 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 la. They're absolutely gone, and anything you're saying is just a waste of oxygen. And if you see that happening, you have to pull them back into that situation. Yeah, and start looking out the window. Good. So now we're into the process. So we've positioned it, and we're into right. Okay. Now we're into, and part of the sales process, the third step, actually is to create maybe a 5 or 6 step process for the meeting. That's not to say that if we temperature check after step 2, we might go to close. But generally speaking, we'll position the meeting. We'll then go into, probably we need to go into finding out about them. Here's the tip, and you need to write this one down. If you're selling to someone, your cup of tea should be empty and theirs should be full and warm, full and cold, because it's them that's doing the talking. Low battery. Their coffee should be full and cold and yours should be empty, because they're doing the talking, not you. As a salesperson going into that business, into that process, and however it's set up, you are the salesperson. If you say something as a salesperson, it's up for debate. If they say it, it's true. So if you say to them, when you have a new website, you'll have all this traffic going into your business, and they go, well, maybe. But if you said to them, so what do you think the benefits of having a new website would be? Well, I suppose if we had a new website, we'd probably get more leads, wouldn't we? Yeah, probably, yeah. And then you've got a system for funneling the leads into there and putting them onto the right page so that it convert. Oh, yeah, that would definitely mean that. And if you got more leads, what would that then mean? Well, we'd convert more, we'd have more money. And it's them telling you what you already know. And it's sometimes, especially if you're up the top there, sometimes it's very tempting to go into know-it-all phase. I'm going to impress you with all my knowledge and stuff because I'm so bloody clever, and I'm going to make you like me so much that you're going to buy off me. So that's one of the problems with eyes, is they focus too much on making them like people like them and not enough on the process. Even if it's another eye, you've still, just because someone likes you, I'm guilty of this again. Of course, I did it on purpose to tell you guys the story. But I spoke to the guy in advance. He wasn't getting home enough to see his kids. He was disappointed about that. He certainly had a good business. He wanted to make it much better. He was a perfect candidate for me. He had the means for coaching. He had the motivation for coaching. And I went along. We had a lovely chat. We high-eyed it up the whole time. And it come to the end, and he went, well, but if I do hire a coach, it will definitely be you. But I'm not. I know I've got some stuff just happening at the moment, and it's got some stuff on. So I'll give you a ring. And I was like, well, high eyes, come on, high bro. And he was like, no, because I hadn't showed him the value, because I've been too busy just getting them to like me. And that has been something I've had to bash out of me, is trying to get them to like you too much. It's important, but it's not everything. And you've got to add in showing them the value of the product as well as getting them to like you. Really important. And so we do that through questioning. We ask them questions about their business, ask them questions about the outcome that they want, and we dig deeper into to find out what their real needs are. So this is how it works. We ask a question, they'll give us an answer. We ask another question, digging deeper. Well, tell me more about that. How do you feel about that? Stuff like that. We get another answer. We ask them another question, we get another answer. Oh, that's really annoying. And then the next thing they're going to do is they're going to ask us a question, and we're going to give them an answer, and that's how we know we've engaged them. So we'll ask them, Kate, so we'll ask questions about what's important to you about the event, what challenges do you see happening, and if those questions are insightful enough, at some point they'll go, so how do you see this working then? And then that's your opportunity to do that. But we don't lead with that, we let them ask us, and they will eventually if we're patient. Again, the I's and the D's in the room, patience is sometimes something that we need to learn and practice. So, again, about questioning, this is what we need to do. Who's seen this before?
I have, I'm just trying to remember what they all stand for.
You lot have, because we did this a couple of weeks ago. God, help a man out. So, this is the formula for change. This works primarily. It was invented. It was a way of describing how people change their behaviour. To get them to a point to stop eating cake, start exercising, or whatever that thing is. But also, it works in the same in a sales environment, because when you make a purchase, you're making a change. You purchase a car, you change your car. You buy a new website, you're changing the way you do business. You change your supplier, all works in the same way. So, what does D stand for? Dissatisfaction. V?
Vision.
Vision, good. F?
Fast steps.
Yes. And R?
Resistance.
Resistance, good. You were
Nice.
listening. So this is how it works.
What was that again?
First steps. So anybody has a certain amount of resistance to change. In some cases that resistance might be quite low. If you're looking for a new car and someone suggests, hey, come and buy this car, my resistance is quite low because I want a new car. In some cases the resistance might be quite higher. If someone's already got a website, or they've already got a healthcare supplier, or they're already dealing with one of your competitors, the resistance might be quite high, and that might be based on the fact that they just can't be bothered to change. And you're the unknown. The lot they've got are okay, they're not brilliant, but there's a fear of change. Also important to note, if you're selling to a business owner or selling to an employee, the motivations are very, very different. And you have to bear that in mind. Generally speaking, an employee that you're selling to has one motivator, and only one motivator. If I hire you, will that make me the hero or the goat? I.e., will my boss like me more and I get promoted? Only thing they give a shit about. Actually, they care about that more than, is it even the right thing for the business? Will it even make the business more money? The only thing they care is, will I get a pat on the head from my boss by making this decision? If you're selling to middle managers, and it's important to know that. So because they're less likely to take risks, you need to more mitigate risk in the process if you're selling to an employee, so that they can be comfortable that they're not putting their neck on the chopping block. As a business owner, if you're selling to a business owner or an entrepreneur, it's different. I mean, you guys are almost certainly selling always to employees, aren't you? Mm-hmm. So it's risk mitigation. It's actually their motivators are it not going wrong is more important to them than it going really right, if that makes sense. So they're motivated against the negative. You know, I'm happy for it to stay the same as long as it doesn't get worse, kind of thing. Whereas if you're selling to a business owner, entrepreneur, or an employee or a business leader that has got a different frame of mind, because they're not all the same, then they're much more likely to take risks, to get excited about stuff. If you're selling to business owners, you can talk about how their life is going to be. Much more different is to talk about, you know, the vision for an employee. So you need to really, really be careful about the messaging and who you're talking to, because to a certain extent, an employee doesn't really care that your thing is going to make the business an extra 100 grand, unless that 100 grand is definitely going to pay them, you know, going to be attributed to them. They're more motivated to make sure it doesn't go wrong. So you have to make sure you get that right. But generally speaking, we've all got resistance to change. So the dissatisfaction times the vision plus the first steps needs to be greater than resistance to make the change. So let me put some numbers in just so you can visualise it. So let's just say I'm standing on one of those 10-metre high diving boards, right? My resistance to jumping off the thing, I would say I'm about 80% resistant. I don't really feel like it. I don't want to jump. I don't particularly like heights. I don't want to do it. So, dissatisfaction. If you were to coach me through the process, maybe there's a queue of people there waiting to jump off. And I'm going to look like a real idiot if I don't jump off soon. And they might all point and laugh at me. Now, I might not care. They can point and laugh all they like. I'm not jumping. So there's no dissatisfaction there. So maybe you need to coach me around, well, will you feel like you've let yourself down if you don't jump? That you've chickened out, that you've not risen to the challenge? Oh, I always rise to challenges. So if you don't, you'll let yourself, you're right. I don't want to let myself down. That's, you know, it's really important to me. A 9 out of 10. Actually, this works very well with how I was feeling just before I abseiled down the Spinnaker Tower, which I hated every flipping minute of it. It was horrendous. So the vision, how am I going to feel when I've done it? So if the vision is maybe, look at that row of attractive women down there ready to clap appreciatively as you gracefully dive off this thing. If that's important to me, then that'd be high. Actually, for me, the way to coach me through that would be to say, Jeff, just feel that, have that satisfaction. You know, you're really frightened now. Really, I can really sense that. But if you can do this, you can do anything. Oh yeah, I can. It's a metaphor, Jeff. Just jump. Yeah, okay, I'm on board. I'm going. So let's just say that's an 8. So 9 times 8 is, thank you. So the first steps, this is the logical side of what I need to do now. Actually, in this example, it's actually literal as well. I need to just do that. I know what I need to do. So that's a 10 out of 10. So that is 82, I'm going to jump. But if that was 75, I wouldn't jump. You know, if I was only 8 out of 10 dissatisfied about not jumping, I wouldn't jump. That would be, yeah, so I'd be on 74, so I wouldn't jump. So that's how it works. So if you're in a sales situation, and again, if things are going to tender, and it's not based on a person's decision, this is a different kettle of fish. But if you're in a sales situation and you don't get the sale, I can absolutely guarantee it's because either that or that aren't in place. They don't fully understand the dissatisfaction of not having you on board. First steps is easy. It's the logical side. If you understand the maths of the equation, because that's a multiplication and that's an add, that number, I mean, that number could be a 0 or a 1, and it wouldn't make much difference. You know, if that's a 0 or 1, it makes a massive difference to the equation. So it's these are the emotional ones. So another sales train of thought says that in slight disagreement to Simon Sinek, who says it's 100% emotional. The other side says it's 80-20. And actually the maths of this work quite well because actually the power of the logical side is much less powerful than the emotional side. And that's why if we try and sell them on process, we're only assessing the logical, we're only working on first steps. So if we say, what's going to happen when you hire me, sir, is we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this, that only affects the logical side and won't get you the sale, unless the resistance is low. So we need for them to feel and understand the dissatisfaction of their current situation. But if we go in there and blunder in there and start telling them, we run a real risk of offending them. If you don't do this, your business will be rubbish. Piss off. Get them to do it. So, you know, in a situation, you know, Hayley, so you would ask questions around, so tell me about the last time you did Halloween. Hayley does events, entertainment. So what happened with your event last Halloween, if you're talking about next time? Well, you know, we had this thing, this company in, it wasn't you. And so tell me about how that went and what was the response from the customers, and did you get this and did you get that? So you might be asking them things that you know that the other company didn't supply or consider. You know, did you get a full brief beforehand? Was there a team leader amongst the team that came to you and organised it all for you? So you're highlighting the dissatisfaction. I mean, that is bordering on trashing the opposition, but without overtly doing it. It's probably not the best example. So a better example would be Scott. So you're doing fire safety. So tell me about the provisions that you've got for fire safety right now in the business. Well, you know, I think we've got that book that somebody signs once a month, and we've got some fire extinguishers around. Okay, so what would happen in this situation? Oh, I don't think we've trained for that. Oh, right, okay. You knew that? Did you know that it's a regulation? If you employ more than 10 people, you need to have done a fire drill. No, I didn't know that. Oh, right, okay. So we need to put that down to make sure that you're compliant with that. Did you know what the penalties of that are? No, I don't know what the penalties are. So you're digging into the dissatisfaction. So thinking, oh crap, you know, I'm actually, you know, if this place gets on fire and someone dies, it's on me because I'm the director. Now I'm more motivated to do something about it. Now for you guys, especially when you're dealing with business owners, dissatisfaction is easy because you dig. So tell me about your business. You start off with the process. So tell me how many leads you're currently getting. Tell me what you're getting from your website. How's your marketing working? What's going on with this? And you'll probably find that they don't know an awful lot. Is that right? So you're not. Oh, right. So you're not getting that information from the website. So how can you know if that's working? How can you know if you want to step this up, how much that's going to cost you? Oh, I can't. So you're asking lots of dissatisfaction questions. There is a process. I know you've looked into it, John, and you guys have seen it too. Actually, the 5 golden questions for getting into dissatisfaction. So I want you to write down these questions that I read out to you verbatim. In fact, we'll role play it first. So, Hayley, I'm going to pick on you.
Thanks.
So, Hayley, what would be the biggest challenge in your business right now?
Understanding the importance of financials and keeping, so I don't know the word for it. Keeping on top of it all,
Okay, so why did you pick that one?
because it's the biggest struggle that I've got, and
Oh.
it's the thing I don't enjoy,
Okay, and why is it important to you to sort that out?
because I can't expand my business if I don't know where it's at.
And if you don't sort it out, what are the consequences?
I'm going to fail,
And why would that worry you?
because I don't have any money.
So I asked 5 questions, and those are pretty much word for word the 5 golden questions. They're basically in a book called Questions Are the Answers by Alan Pease. Now I asked her what her first priority was, and
What's
said,
the last one?
Oh, yeah, well,
why would that worry
so
you?
I was listening to you two, not actually writing them down. So I got one.
I'm going to go
I was
through
like,
them
yeah,
again.
what were the
I'll
answers?
go through them again.
Yeah, sorry.
So it's fine. So the first question I asked you was, what's your biggest priority? And you can all ask that.
Yep.
In that, what's your biggest priority when it comes to fire safety? What is your biggest priority when it comes to recruitment? And they'll tell you a surface level thing with no emotion behind it. That's why we have to dig deeper to find that emotion. So then I said, why did you pick that one? So that's question number 2. First one is, what's your priority? I prefer priority to challenge, because actually if you say what's your biggest challenge in the business, people will say, well, I haven't got a challenge right now, everything's brilliant actually, but my priority is that I want to grow it even more. So you don't want to kind of put that potential in there. I'll get my low battery button pressed. So the second question is, why is that important to you? The third question, sorry, I'm getting confused. Why did you pick that one? Is the second one, thank you. First one, what's your priority?
Challenge, priority, actually priority.
So,
You type about, send it to me.
first one, what's your biggest challenge in the business right now, or priority? Second one, why did you pick that one? Third question, why is that important to you? And then that's the third question. The fourth question is then flipping it. What's the consequences of not having that sorted out? Or what's the consequences of not doing that? And the last one is, well, why would that worry you?
Be less I for a moment.
Slow down, you mean? Okay.
Writing that down. I'll give up, copying somebody else's. Be less I for a moment. That's not the 5th question. Give up.
You can read them right.
Yeah, I'll do it with it back.
So I'll go through them again. First question. What's the biggest priority in your business right now, or in for your events, or why did you pick that one? Why is that important to you? What are the consequences of not having it, not doing it, not getting that? And why would that worry you? That will take you down to the emotion. And what you might find is you supplement some of those questions with some, I can't remember what we call them, but encouraging questions like, can be as simple as and, or tell me more, or tell me more about that, or why do you think that? So you're leading them through with more engaging questions. So when there's, I didn't want to open you out in front of everybody in that respect, but actually, I could have dug deeper into the emotion around there, and
What about people that aren't like high Ds, that might, even with those 5 questions, are likely not to open up? You sort of go through them and go, oh, all right, this is getting a bit awkward now. Clearly you don't want to talk. Do you know, there will be people who give you very short answers and you've not got any emotion out of them whatsoever, and you're sort of. Is there anything else?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
And you do find that sometimes.
Yeah, and then you just can't.
But you know, as ever with all these things, I don't aim for perfection. I aim for improvement. And by going through this process, maybe it doesn't get 100% of people, but it'll get most people.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, you'll follow that. The key is to go down into the emotion. So you find a priority or an emotion, and then you dig down into that. So you get to that point where they're telling you, well, if I don't get this right, I'm going to lose my job. Or if this doesn't happen, you know, we're not going on holiday next year. Or if I don't, you know, if I don't spend less time in my business, my wife's going to leave me. Which is that kind of, that's where you get to with that. And then that's when you're in high levels of dissatisfaction. Then you're really moving into the situation now. You know, Hayley, it might be, do you know what, the last lot I hired were bloody awful, and if I hire someone as bad as that, I'm for the chop. And then you go, because that's not even the end of it, so what would happen if that happened? What do you mean? Well, you know, if you lost your job, what would happen? Well, we'd be really buggered because, you know, we want to go on holiday next year, and you know, we want to have a family next year and all that kind of stuff. That's really when you get into the emotion of it.
People that are resistant to it probably know that you're about to go to a place they don't really want to go to. You know, so why are you asking me this?
Yeah.
It's because they know you're going to take them to, you're going to get something from them that's going to make them appear to be weak. So that's what a high D would give you, that kind of really narky kind of answer, because they know they're going to have to kind of open up in a way they wouldn't normally.
Yeah.
So they might get aggressive and kind of, and at that point, you probably know there is something.
Yeah. I think the resistance comes from avoidance, definitely. But that doesn't mean that you don't go there. Sometimes you have to push a bit harder in that respect. And it depends on what type of meeting you're having in that point. You know, what I do is very emotional in that respect. And for you it probably is too. But in a corporate thing, you probably not have people in tears that often. But don't forget, they're very important. Criers are buyers. And if you get to this point, and you hit that emotion, then you know they need to get to that emotion. It's not, you're not manipulating. You need to get to that emotion to understand the gravity of their situation. You're helping them to get the next move. You know, they are resistant because they don't feel they want to spend 10 grand on a new website. But if you get to that point, if you don't do this, you're not going to take the business to the next level. You're going to live a life of regret or whatever that thing is. You're right. You've helped me there. Thank you. So the next point is because you don't leave them down there. Because if you leave them down there, they'll associate you with unhappiness. So the next point is that you ask vision questions next. So just say, let's imagine that you did an amazing event and it was so much better than last year's, and all the customers were raving reports. And what would that do for your career? Oh God, that'd be brilliant. After the last event, I really need a win right now. So, you know, if you could continue to do that, if we worked with you over and over and we delivered these great events for you, what would that do for your career? Well, do you know what? You know, I really want to move up. I want to move up to from account manager to account director. And I really need some good events behind me to be able to do that. So yeah, if you can work with me on that, that would be brilliant. So then you're working on the vision of what it would be like if you do business with us. You know, what's it going to do for your event's reputation if you can, and relationship with the local councils, if you get through this scot-free and without any events, and maybe, or even it's not that there isn't events, but you've dealt with them really, really professionally. How's that going to look? That's going to be great, because you know the local council have given us grief. But if we can see that we're stepping up a gear and really dealing with that, then that's going to really help our relationship with them. Because in the vision, they're telling you all the stuff that you already know, that you're probably tempted to tell them yourself, but you need them to tell you, because then they'll believe it. So the first steps is just the logical part of, you know, what happens. So, what will happen is you say go, and then we'll put this in place, and we'll let you know, within 3 weeks who's on your team for your event, and where that goes. Actually, guys should talk about events because you both do stuff at events. So, what's the process? How do I hire you? And when I hire you, what happens next? And we all know that stuff. So yeah, what happens is you hit me, you pay the deposit. As soon as that, we get to work and we get this done. But the important part is this bit here. I'm here for time. Good. Anyone got any questions on that?
What time does this end, Jeff? I've got to pick up my kids.
Make it end. Well, we've going to 5:30.
I'll probably have to leave a bit before that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go in if you need to.
Yeah, okay.
Just wait till it sounds rubbish and then go. And then I'll know to cross that bit out next time. So that actually brings us up to the point of closing. When we get to the close. So after we've asked these questions and we get to that point and we've showed them the first steps and how it's going to go, then we're going to move them along with a temperature check question. So we're going to say, how does that fit with what you had in mind? And if we go, well, that seems all right. So would it be okay now if I showed you, are you ready for me to show you the process that would happen if we worked together? Sorry, when we worked together. Yes, that's great. So and then you're moving people along the line. So you say, in my case, that's when I say, we start talking about fortnightly or weekly coaching. We talk about the alignment and all that other stuff. In your case, it'll be, you start moving them through your UBS. So, well, the first thing is we need to do the fact find stuff so we can get to the essence of your brand, and then we're going to do the research and you talk them through the process. And then once you talk them through the process again, how does that fit with what you had in mind? Yeah, that seems brilliant. Then we've got to close them. You ask for the business. Have to ask for the business. You'd be amazed how many people get to the end of the bit and go, okay, well, thanks very much, let me know, ta-ta, and run out the door. And they don't ask for the business. Get the business in the room and have in some cases, you might have a method of getting a deposit there and then. I've got a PayPal thing on my phone, I can take a deposit anywhere I want. If you feel that that's the right thing to do in that situation. But you're going to need to get them to a close, you need to get them to a decision. Some people, again, it's this sales thing, I don't want to put you under pressure, so you think about it and I'll speak to you tomorrow. No. Ask for the business. If they demand to speak, to go away and think about it, then we can discuss that. But you've always got to ask for the business. Based on, this is where you refer back to your positioning statement. Remember what we said at the start of the meeting, that if we got 3 yeses to those questions, we'd be good to go. So, do we have synergy, or whatever your ones are? Yeah, I feel that we could really work together. Certainly from my point of view, we've got on quite well in this conversation, so I'm kind of guessing that you're the same. From the stuff I showed you earlier, I think there's masses of value that we can add into the business processes and the stuff that we can do. And I think you seem on board with that. Is that right? Yeah, great. And you committed? Yeah, no, I'm definitely committed. Great. But we've got 3 yeses. And then we have to say something that closes the deal. So at that point, we ask for the business. And I've got some ways of doing that for you as well. Does anyone feel uncomfortable at that point for asking for the business?
Depends how the meeting's set up sometimes. Yeah.
So, either or close. Who's listened to my Andy Bounds podcast?
Yeah.
So one of the things I really like he said in there is you never give someone an option to buy the option is, would you like to buy this or not?
Options.
It seems to me after what we've been through here, that either the weekly or the fortnightly or the gold or the silver package seems to work for you. So you should go for my gold package with the stilts and the fire breathers, or you say you need to go for the. I think the middle one looks right for you right now. We can always move up to that, but which one do you think works best for you? This, you know, silver or gold, bronze or silver. So you're not giving them a, please choose me or not, you know. It's like, well, which one, you know, it's an assumptive sale. Because of the rapport you've had in the session, you've answered all their questions, you've asked them the temperature check questions, which gives their, well, of course. So which one do you want? And it's a close, oh, I'll have that one. Great, okay, move forward. So the either or close, which one of these, bronze or silver or gold, which one works best for you? That's one close. Another one is the diary close. So you've asked the temperature, yeah, I've got all the details I need. So then you move on to, so when's a good time for that? I've got some time next week. Tuesday or Wednesday. Again, either or close, a diary close. When's the perfect day for that discovery session, or for us to have a site meeting to get the thing going? So another close is your guarantee. If they're a bit iffy and you've got a guarantee, let's go through the points of your guarantee so that show you how this is a no-brainer. But you need to have a guarantee in place for that. Another close is, how do you like to pay for that? Would you like to pay now? Would you like to pay by card? Or shall I invoice you? Do you want to pay in instalments? I've got an instalment program, or I've got an upfront program. If you're paying up front, you get a small discount. Which would you like? Oh, okay, no, I'll have the instalments, thanks. Or would you like to go through our agreement, not contract, our agreement, show all the terms of business so that we can get all that sorted out right now and get it done. And at that point, we're going through the close. So it's a softer close rather than just saying, so what do you think? It's assumptive. You've offered them all the opportunities to come up with, to say, oh, I'm not sure about this, I'm not sure about that, and we're going to cover objections in a minute, by the way. To come up with anything, and if it gets to the point where, no, we're good, ask for the business. Either book it in your diary, arrange payment, pick a program, just get the close, because once people have decided, they made that decision, they're mostly pretty much done. Ideally, you want a commitment for a signature or a payment, but mostly once they've decided, they're done, and they go, okay, I'm actually just going to move on to something else now. You know, I'm going to get on with my life, and I've got other decisions to make somewhere else. That one's done. That job's done. But you might get objections. So when you ask your temperature check questions, you might get objections. So someone might say, you might ask a temperature check. So what objections do you think we'll hear?
Not quite ready for the moment.
Yeah, it's not, the time's not right, or price. Yeah. What else? Is there any that we hear in regularly?
What guarantee can you give me that you will be better than the last lot that said they were as good as you?
Great. Is that something you hear a lot, or?
You're a twat.
So,
feel felt found.
Is anyone getting repeating objections?
What was that?
Price.
Price, yeah.
In most cases, potentially not your case actually, but in most cases, we create our own objections through, if it's price, partially you, but not 100%. If it's price, for example, we just haven't showed them the value. Price is an excuse. And quite often they'll just say price. Maybe they just don't like you. And they'll say price, because it's an easy way of getting out. Price is the go-to excuse for not buying. So sometimes it's not about price. And even if it is, it's not about price, it's about value. But objections are good. When someone objects, it means that they're considering it, they're thinking about it, they're poking it, they want to make sure it works before they buy. So we mustn't treat objections like they're bad. Objections are good, it's a good sign. You know, I did some training, some sales training with a client of mine and one of his surveyors to do a sales process when they were in the house. And this guy sat there the entire time, nodding his head, with a little smirk on his face that I really wanted to slap. And he didn't push back once on any of the sales processes we talked about. He didn't argue, he didn't push back, he didn't object in any way. And the reason that he did that is because he was not in any way intended to do any of the stuff that we were talking about. That's why I wasn't objecting. If he'd have begun, well, you know, maybe this will work or maybe that won't work, and I'd rather he push back a lot. People don't push back at all. If you get nothing out of people, you don't get no objections, quite often you're not going to get a sale. You need some objections. You need, because objections are ways of them thinking about how it's going to work for them. So if you get absolutely nothing, then you're not doing very well. But when you get an objection, here's the first tip for objections, is, what's the phrase? Isolate the objection. So what you don't want to do is have an objection, discuss the objection, overcome it, overcome the objection, only to find there's another one waiting for you the other side. So, you know, we talk about the objection is price, and you remind them, don't forget that I was going to do all this extra stuff as well here. That's going to mean that you're going to make more money or whatever. Oh, no, I'd forgotten about that. Okay, you know, but actually it's also not the right time as well. And then you're circling back around. So isolating the objection is to say, well, I'm not sure about the money, to be honest. Okay, well, thanks for letting me know. That's great that we've raised that. If it wasn't for the money, put the money to one side. And if we could sort that out, is there anything else that would stop you from doing business with us today? Is there anything else that would stop your decision? Well, actually, I'm not sure that right now is the right time for us. You know, I'm thinking maybe in the new year. Okay, great. So if we had the money sorted out and the timing was right, is there anything else that would stop you from going ahead right now? And they go, no, that's it, just money and timing. That's all my concerns. Brilliant. Okay, so let's talk about the money. And say, okay, you know, maybe the upfront payment's no good. Actually, we could do some instalments or something like that. Would that make it cash flow easier for you? Yeah, it would actually. Thanks very much. That's great. So we've overcome that objection. Or we go into it. You know, I actually don't like to call them objections. I'd like to call them resistance. People are just a little bit more resistant. And what we don't want to do is go at loggerheads. So I think it's expensive. No, it's not. If someone says it's expensive, you go, yeah, it is. Always agree with the objection. Yeah, do you know what? You know, it's not the right time. Do you know what? Sometimes it doesn't feel like the right time. I agree with you then. I agree. Sometimes, you know, you're in a situation, you think, oh, if only I got these ducks in a row. It just doesn't feel like the right time. I really understand that. So you agree with the objection. I like to call them, it's resistance, and we need to just circle around that resistance. But if you start to disagree with them, you'll lose them. I was looking at new cars. I was having my Audi serviced, and I went into Mercedes next door, and I was looking at a Mercedes, and this young guy comes up to me, and we start having a nice chat about the car. He says, oh, you know, do you want to have a drive? He says, well, maybe. I'm just looking around. To be honest, I want the Maserati Ghibli, and that's my preferred car, but I was just seeing, you know, what else is there. And he went, oh, you don't want one of those. Do you know, it's like a Mondeo underneath. Might be pretty on the outside, crap on the inside. I went, all right, ta-ta. He just annoyed. What he should have said in that situation was, that's a really nice car. You are clearly a man of taste. Does it? But the thing is about the Mazda. I mean, at the time I was looking at a convertible. I was looking at a convertible. He said, "It's a lovely car, that." But you know, you're looking at a convertible. They don't do it in convertible, do they? If you want a Maserati convertible, it's 100 grand. this is 50. Yeah, you're right. He might have engaged me in some way. I was talking about the other one. But he might have, but what he did, he shut me down by disagreeing with me. And all I just thought then, he was a tit, quite frankly. So we've always got to agree. And if I say it's expensive, yeah, it is. But, if you think, one of my phrases is if you think education is expensive, you should try stupidity. No, it's not stupidity. What's the word I use? Ignorance. Ignorance is much more expensive. So there's ways. It is. I understand that £1,000 a month, £2,000 a month seems like a lot of money to you right now.
Is it worth at that point going back to the emotional side again, going back to those when you ask them 5 questions and they come out with their why is it a problem now, and digging into that,
Absolutely, yeah.
reverting back to that and saying yes it is expensive, but as you talked about earlier, it's going to be this much of a problem if you don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good way of doing it. Just bring them back to that place.
It's like the training thing about price, isn't it? It's like when the FD says, kind of, how can you kind of get this training kind of seems expensive. What if they get the training and leave? And then the flip around, that's what if we don't train them, they stay.
Yeah, exactly. So if it's around price, yeah, it is expensive. But how much is it going to cost you if you don't do it? And by the way, when you ask a question like that, you can just shut the hell up. And then when you ask for the business, shut the hell up. I normally use a different word instead of hell. But when you ask for the business, you say, how does that fit with what you had in mind? Would you like silver or bronze? Say nothing. Because A, they might be processing it. And B, if you process it, you'll then be butting into the conversation they're having with themselves. And B, then you'll look desperate. If you're like, so then we can also do this and we can do that and we can do the other. When you ask for the business, the next thing you say is nothing. I did that once with a guy who was in financial services, and we sat there for about 5 minutes. And in the end, he looked at me and he said, you're doing that thing where you ask for the money and then don't say anything, aren't you? And I said, yeah, and you just lost. He didn't buy. But it would have been a great story if he had it done.
Tell the better story.
Yeah. They've let facts get in the way of a good story. But don't say anything, especially if you're in front of a C or an S. Just let them have some time. Just sit there, smile, and nod your head up until they're ready. And then they might come up with another objection, and that's great. We love objections. Agree with the objection, discuss it, bring them back to the dissatisfaction, talk about the cost of not doing it versus the cost of doing it. You'll know of the objections that you have in your business, and you'll know how to get around those objections. So we're not going to go into that today. But the point is, you must isolate them, because if you overcome one, and they just hit you with another one and another one, you run out of steam. Because also, what we're saying, if we talked about the money and the money was okay, if it wasn't for the money, would you go ahead? Yeah, okay. Okay, so then we talk about the money, and now we go, oh, okay, so I do understand the cost of not doing it. Yeah, when my sales are sliding, I don't want someone to die. So I understand that actually, and I understand now you mention it, I do understand that we need to maybe buy a premium service, buy cheap, buy twice. I get it. Great. Okay, so we're okay with the money. Good. Well, you just said a minute ago that if we could be okay with the money, then we're good to go ahead. That's not what you say to them, but you go, great. Okay, so when money's okay, go back to the close. Have I now showed you enough that to help you make a decision today? Yeah, I have. Great. Wednesday or Thursday, bronze or silver? Done. Or, depending on your process, you might be closing for the second meeting. So bear that in mind, like I said at the start. If it's a different process, you might then close to the second meeting. But you get the close. That's the important part.